Yo, what is up? It is me, and today I'm going to be talking about the ride along that I went on Monday. So, um, last video I asked you guys to ask questions for a police officer, and overwhelmingly I got pretty much no responses. I got one legitimate one, which I did ask the officer. So, I'll answer that one question. Another question that I gave him that was very interesting, his response, and the other experiences I had during the ride along. So the first question was, what made the police officer that I was riding with want to join the force? So I asked him the question, and the simple answer was television. He watched lots of crime shows, I guess, as a kid, and he absolutely loved it. He got a bachelor's in forensic science and figured out it wasn't for him. So, basically, that's what happened. His interest was piqued from TV, and he thought about it a lot, and went and got a bachelor's in it. And then he figured out it wasn't for him, and he ended up being a police officer. So I thought that was an interesting, story. So now he actually has a special job in the police department that he works in, where he's just a normal cop, but he also has some sort of ability to collect evidence and stuff because he had that bachelor's. So I thought that was interesting. The second question I asked him was what he thought about the Black Lives Matter movement and the anti-police movement. Whether or not you believe those are the same thing. I didn't, say any opinion about it. I just asked him, and then we got in an interesting discussion about it. But I'll start with the anti-police movement. He said that there's always going to be opposition to the police because the police make very important decisions that result in people going to jail, people being injured, sometimes fatally, and they have to make decisions during their job that affect other people's lives. And a lot of people don't agree with those decisions, and that's understandable because it affects their families, it affects whatever. But he said, as a police officer, that you have to make important decisions, you have to take risks, or you're not a good police officer. You have to uphold the law, and you have to protect the people around you and yourself, most importantly. These aren't the exact words. I'm paraphrasing what he said, basically. And you have to protect the people around you. So, if you make a decision that's questionable, all decisions that you make that are risky or controversial are going to be questionable. So he said, as a police officer, you should expect to get sued, because if you don't get sued sometime in your career, he said you're not doing the right thing, because you have to take risks in order to do those things. And if you're doing everything that everyone agrees with, then you're not, doing your job right, basically. He said the Black Lives Matter movement, though, is, he said he agrees on some of it. These aren't the exact words he said, but it sounded like a quarter of the cases that they talk about he agrees with them on. But he said 75% of it, maybe less, I don't know. I don't know his percentages, quote unquote, but it's just that's the impression I got, was he was saying a majority of it he believed that The police officer was under stress. They were responding what their training told them to do, and what their, what they believed they had to do to protect those around them and themselves. So, when it resulted in a fatal, some sort of fatal, I can't think of the word. When someone dies as a result of it, he said that, it's terrible, obviously, but, in some of those cases, those people were defending themselves or believed they were defending themselves, and they just did what their training told them to do. So, yeah, but he said there obviously is police brutality. It's a thing. It's just police officers are people too. There are bad people in the world, obviously, or we wouldn't have to have police. So sometimes there's bad police officers, and they do bad things. So he said if the Black Lives Matter movement focused more on victims and not on race, then he would fully support it. But the fact that they focus specifically on black people and not just, victims, which you can argue are disproportionately black, but, that's that. So, I thought that was a very good answer. I completely agreed with him. 100%. So, yeah. And then, the rest of the ride was pretty boring. We didn't really do much. We pulled over one person for speeding. We assisted in one call, but we didn't even get out of the car. We were just kind of like driving by to make sure the police officer was okay. And then we arrested 2 homeless people for trespassing and drinking in public. So it wasn't that interesting of a day. It was a very quiet day, quite honestly, but I enjoyed the experience. It was really fun. I would suggest it for anyone. It's not very dangerous as long as you do it in the suburbs. Don't go in the city and do this, even though they probably won't let you until you're 18. Most cities, quote unquote. So, yeah, that was my experience. It was pretty interesting. Again, I suggest it for anyone. Like, favorite, and subscribe. I hope you learned something today. I did. It was a cool experience. So yeah, like, favorite, and subscribe. I will see you next time. Peace.